Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to another Books Weekly, my Sunday video in which I discuss books that I've either finished from a previous week or read last week or started last week. And first, the two books that I've finally finished last week, because as you might remember, last Sunday I didn't do a Books Weekly because I didn't read that much. So I finally finished the two books from the week before, and the first of those is Yoko Tawada, Memoirs of a Polar Bear. Now, I talked already a little bit about Yoko Tawada. She's a Japanese writer who lives in Germany, and she writes in Japanese and German. Memoirs of a Polar Bear was originally written in Japanese in 2011, and as far as I could find out, she translated herself into German, Etüden im Schnee, and that book came out in 2014, and last year the English translation came out, and that is Memoirs of a Polar Bear. And the English translation was done by Susan Bernofsky. Now, Memoir of a Polar Bear is more or less what it says. It's the story of not one but three polar bears, a grandmother, a mother, and the son. The story is told twice from the perspective of the polar bears, the grandmother and the son, and the middle part, the mother Tosca, is told from the perspective of the trainer, Barbara. Now, all three polar bears are real polar bears. Some of them are in a circus or in a zoo, but they can talk. They can also have other jobs. The grandmother writes an autobiography and gives talks. She goes to conferences. So it's a mixture of polar bears being polar bears, but they still interact in the human society as if they were humans. I liked the book. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would when I started it, but that's mainly because I find the language, I read it in German, so I don't know how the English translation would make me feel, but I thought in German the language was very distant. It gave me a very distant feeling to the book. It was sort of a cool, almost essayistic language that did not appeal to me very much. But that's personal. What I find very interesting about the book is that it is a satire, or you could say social commentary. You can interpret it as a plea for animal rights, but you can also interpret it in various other ways. The polar bears as a metaphor for immigrants, or for asylum seekers, or for poor people living in abhorrent conditions. So it's a very strange but still interesting mix of social commentary, stories of mother and daughter and son. And I don't know. I mean, I would recommend it still, just because it is such a different experience. But I'm fully aware that this kind of book might not appeal to everyone. So maybe the best thing, if what I tell you about it interests you, maybe then the best thing I guess would be to download a sample from Amazon or something, and try the first couple of pages, see whether this particular kind of satire story with polar bears in the middle is something for you. Like I said, I liked it, didn't love the language, and that's why in the end I didn't love it. But it was a nice, strange little book. And I also finished finally the second book of 2 weeks ago, and that is Molly McCloskey, When Light is Like Water. This is the ARC copy, so the book doesn't look like that. The ARC was kindly sent to me by the publisher. The book came out in the UK end of April, and in Ireland the 4th of May, and I will leave up here a picture of how the original book looks like. Now, Molly McCloskey was born in 1964 in Philadelphia, but she has lived in Ireland ever since her mid-20s, and the book is also set in Ireland. Molly McCloskey has written fiction, short stories, and also a memoir, Circles Around the Sun, about her brother, in 2011 to much acclaim. So she is not a newcomer but a seasoned writer. When Light is Like Water is the story of Alice. Alice is an American woman who moved to Ireland like the author when she was in her 20s. She wanted to become a journalist, maybe. She married Eddie. She had an affair. She divorced. She went to Africa for working for an NGO. And after her mother, who stayed in the US and remarried, lived in Florida, after her mother died, Alice returns to Ireland, and the book is told from the perspective after the return, looking back on her life, telling us the story of her marriage, telling us the story of her affair, of her wanderings in Africa, in Nairobi mainly, and of her state of mind now. Although I have to say, the main focus of the book is the story of her life looking back. It's a quite a slim book, under 200 pages, and I liked it. I mean, it's not a very new story. It's the story of a woman, of a marriage, of her work, of her coming to a foreign country. But I thought the language was really beautiful. It's really well told. It's like Alice is telling a friend her story. It's written in the first person perspective. So it's like you're sitting down with Alice and she tells you her life story. And I think these kind of books, especially for me, because I'm such a plot-oriented reader, and the plot is not very extraordinary, or there are no twists and turns. I mean, of course, you want to find out what happened and why what happened with her and Eddie, but that's not the main point. It's books like that, at least for me, it is that I like them if they are written in a way, intimate, subtle, almost whispering a story, and that can suck you in. So even though the story is nothing out of the ordinary, like I said, it's a very ordinary story, I still thought it was a really good book, and that was mainly because of the way it was written. So if you want to, I mean, I would certainly recommend it. Give it a try if that kind of book with this quiet, subtle way of telling an intimate story interests you. The next book I read was a non-fiction book, and that is Vanessa Potter, Patient, age 69, and the story of my second sight. The book came out in the Kindle edition end of May. For those of you who only want to have physical books, you have to wait a while because the hardcover is expected to come out in July of this year. Vanessa Potter was a television producer, advertising in London for a London broadcaster when in 2000, was in her 40s, in 2012, married, 2 children, hectic job, when all of a sudden, within a couple of days, she lost the ability to see. She went blind. So she had to go to the hospital, and the doctors couldn't find out what she had at first, and then it turned out that she had quite a rare autoimmune disease, neuromyelitis optica. I will leave a link of the Wikipedia page down below because they can explain it much better than I can. But like I said, it's an autoimmune disease, and you lose affects the optic nerve and the spinal cord. So she not only lost her sight, but she also lost the ability to walk, to move her limbs properly. She couldn't grip anything anymore. The more motoric problems with the limbs and the walking, that went away after treatment quite soon, but regaining the sight was much more difficult. And the book is partly, the first part is a memoir of her illness and the regaining of sight, because if I say regaining of sight, it's actually not accurate, because she still to the day cannot see the way we see. She has to focus on things to see them properly. It's almost, she describes it as if she has to remember to see something. So if she looks at her husband, she knows how he looks like, and she has to remember how he looks like in order to be able to see him. The same with colors. She still, after her recovery, she cannot see colors the way we normally see colors. I don't think I explained that very well. Read the book. She explains it much better. So it's a memoir of a very strange illness and recovery. It's also, in the second part, the way Vanessa Potter deals with this different second sight. She started an art project. I leave a link to her website under the pseudonym Patient Age 69. She started a blog when she was still recovering, and she connected with neuroscientists and neurologists and artists and made an art project to sort of be able to see the various waves in your brain, which is very interesting. It's also, you can check it out on YouTube. I really thought it was a fascinating book, very well written, and the especially haunting was the recovery process, and I tried to understand how it is for her now, how seeing now is for her, how strange and different and weird. And even though I read many of the pages twice in order to picture it, it's still very, very difficult to picture the way she experiences the world. But if you are, like me, interested in these kind of memoirs where a certain extraordinary personal experience is put into a book, then you will certainly like it, and I can absolutely recommend it. The last book I want to talk to you about is the book that I've started this week, and that is Simone de Beauvoir, Memoirs of Ambiguitiy. And this is the Dutch edition, obviously. Can you see the title? Let me see, like this. Pleidooi voor een moraal der dubbelzinnigheid. Because it's a reread, so I have the Dutch edition. I will reread the Dutch edition. The book was first published in 1944, and it's Simone de Beauvoir's ethics. The ambiguity, in just very briefly, means that you have a choice, and that you have to make a choice to be human. There are always various choices, hence ambiguous. Life is ambiguous. You can go one way or another, and you have to make a choice. I'm rereading this for a Goodreads book club. I'm shamefully late, because this is our May read, and that is the Existential Book Club. I will leave a link in the description box. We read books relating to existentialist philosophy, but not only non-fiction like this, but I think next month we will read Kafka. We read Dostoevsky, and this month Simone de Beauvoir, and I hope that I'm just in time before the end of May that I will read this book. So this was it for this week's Books Weekly. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I hope to talk to you in the comments. I will go off, take a shower now, because it's unbelievably hot and humid here in Europe. and I'll talk to you soon in my next video. Bye bye.